Hello and welcome to Crux Investor. We spoke earlier today with Jeff Wilson, the CEO of Precipitate Gold, the TSX-V gold explorer with assets in the Dominican Republic. And if you want to hear my thoughts, views, and commentary on him and the company, you can catch that at cruxinvestor.com/club. We can also access other summaries of other interviews that we've done. We've got company reports in there, market commentary from experts from all around the world, and a thriving, intelligent group of individuals sharing thoughts and ideas. We'd also like your feedback, so do remember to click the like button and leave your comments. And you can also look in the description below at some of the topics we discussed. Anything interests you in particular, click the number beside that topic. That's called a timestamp, and I'll jump you through to that part of the interview. And if I could ask that you also click the subscription button in the corner of the screen to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And of course, for more videos like this, click the notification bell. Jeff, how are you doing, sir?
Doing very well, thanks, Matt.
Good to have you back. A few things have happened since we last spoke in, beginning of June. Seems so long ago.
That's right.
What have you been up to?
Yeah, it's been interesting times, and lots been happening not only for the company, but certainly here in the market in the gold space. It's been a very exciting spring and summer for sure.
It's been nuts. You've doubled in price. Share price has doubled since we last saw you. You're having a nice time. You're making the most of it.
We are, yeah. No, we had a few news catalysts that came together late spring, and we've seen some nice trading volume and some nice movement in the share price. Of course, a little bit of rising tide, of course, but we've also fed some fairly progressive good news into the market and been rewarded for it, which has been nice.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good. Look, for people new to this, perhaps didn't see the first interview, haven't heard your story before. Give us that 1 minute overview of what you have, and then we'll pick it up from there.
Yeah, so we're a junior exploration company focused in the Dominican Republic as a jurisdiction. We've got 3 key projects or assets all in the Dominican Republic, sort of at various stages of work. One of our first forays into the country was a project called Juan de Herrera, which is adjacent to an existing resource held by a company called Goldquest. We've done a couple of drill programs there, delineated a number of targets, many of which are drill ready. We've sort of parked that over the last couple of years due to some circumstances with respect to sort of politics, as you know. And we then shifted over to a central part of the country where there's much more mining activity. It's a little bit more mining friendly. And we picked up two key projects in that part of the country, Pueblo Grande and Ponton. Pueblo Grande has a very strategically located adjacent to one of the largest mining operations in the world, run by Barrick. And Ponton was a very interesting early stage, but quite significant but untested project about 25 kilometers away. So those have been kind of our 3 property makes up our property portfolio with our 3 projects, and we're sort of looking forward to seeing work on all 3 of those projects between now and year end.
Great summary. Hey, look, again, for people new to this, Dominican Republic, not that well known in terms of a mining jurisdiction. You also had a change of government recently. So how have things been since the new government stepped in?
Yeah, things have been quite positive. I mean, we did have some stalls with the previous government. Nothing major as far as we were concerned. There were some hang-ups with some certain projects, but as far as our experience was, we were able to get our permits and do our work and get the necessary green lights that we needed. But this change in government has shifted to a much more, I think, business friendly, economy friendly, and in turn pro-mining mandate. And obviously with what's happening with COVID and the economic downturn that creates in a very tourism-centric economy like the Dominican Republic, we're seeing much more of a push towards the upside and the potential economic benefits of mining. So we're hearing a lot of that commentary from the new inbound president and the government. So that's been very positive for us.
So positive commentary, rhetoric. You must be pleased, but I imagine not as pleased as Goldquest on the Juan Herrera project.
Correct. Yeah. So as some people may know, Goldquest and their Juan de Herrera project is a several million ounce resource project at a pre-feasibility stage. It's got lots of exploration potential, and it's sort of was one of the catalysts for our entry into the country back in 2012. The discovery of that deposit. It's been hung up on some politics and really a permitting or a license to get through into exploitation from exploration. And that's been a long drawn out process under the previous regime. And there were some issues there related to the outgoing president that it just seemed to sit on his desk. And I think with the change in politics, as you say, I think this is shines a very positive light for Romero in hopefully getting that license that it needs to move this project through development. And obviously, any forward movement there will benefit us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we're not sure of the timing of that. Or, we assume things are positive. I'll take what you say as true. Things are more positive with regards to that, but we don't know when things will move forward. So if they move forward, I'll ask this question, if they move forward, just remind people what these sort of economics there look like for you if that project gets going, and give us an idea of timelines as to when your shareholders get some sort of benefit.
Yeah. So again, it is a great unknown in terms of when a license would be granted by the government. There's lots of shuffling, as you can imagine, with respect to cabinet appointments and new ministers and that kind of thing. So we're going to have a little bit of a transition period here, compounded by what's happening in the COVID world that we're still living in. So I'm not under the impression that something's going to happen tomorrow, but I think that in due course there will be some positivity there. What that would mean is that would allow GoldQuest to move that project into environmental impact studies and marching down the path towards a proper feasibility study. The positive impact on that for us is not only do they have a significant existing resource, they've got a lot of exploration targets within their property package as well. We're sitting immediately adjacent to them, right up against their claim boundary for about 40 kilometers strike. In the same geological terrain, many of their existing exploration targets sort of butt up against our claim boundary and seem to coincide with some areas where we'd identified some significant mineralization as well, whether geochemistry or drill results of our own. So you've kind of got this potential of this consolidated, sort of underexplored exploration potential throughout the belt. And I think that, for anybody to go in and want to really push hard on exploration to try to find gold, in an area, you want to know that the guys that have already found it can be successful in extracting it. And that sort of paves the way for investors to be more comfortable, for our company to be more comfortable, and GoldQuest similarly, in continuing to invest in the exploration upside and identifying more known mineralization. Okay,
so just remind people again what strategy you've come up with, because you obviously did a bit of work on that. You came up against a very strong headwind, said, actually, let's put our tools down there and focus somewhere else. So what are you relying on now happening?
Yeah, so we've got an extensive amount of data. We were there operating fairly actively. Again, the market wasn't great, so there were some fits and starts just with respect to access to capital, et cetera. But we were there from 2012 and quite active right up until, say, 2016, 2017. So we've got extensive amount of targets. We've done an extensive amount of soil sampling and rock sampling, geochemistry, geophysics, and delineated a number of targets. And in fact, we've got drill permits for multiple target areas within our land package. GoldQuest, when they put the brakes on, they had just received about $24 million investment, equity investment from Agnico Eagle. And Agnico's mandate with that investment was the exploration upside. They believed that GoldQuest had a nice deposit and a nice, attractive possible mining operation, but the exploration potential within the district was really what attracted them. So I think that that's a validation. I think when a mid-tier or major comes in and invests in the exploration upside, I think it's a validation of the potential to find more in this belt and in this district. And we feel as if our land package is, as prospective as many of the targets that GoldQuest has delineated. Yet our market cap is significantly lower, and of course we don't have the anchor or the foundation of a several million ounce deposit in place. But we think there's lots of potential in this belt, and really it's a matter of getting sort of the social comfort and the licensing comfort to justify again, investing back into the exploration of this district. So again, we've got multiple targets, multiple very advanced targets that we've delineated through several stages of work, and are keen to, at the right time, to deploy our crews back into the field and try to bring some of these targets to a drill stage very promptly. And again, many of them are permitted already.
Or have a conversation with GoldQuest.
Yes, there's been a lot of talk about that since 2012, frankly, when we entered into the fray and picked up the ground adjacent to them. One sort of sidebar to that is, the Dominican Republic has a had a policy under the previous government about a certain amount of hectares that any company can own. And so we were able to pick up, we're often asked, why were you able to get this very strategic land package immediately adjacent to a brand new discovery? And the reason was that they were maxed out on their land holding. And so we were able to slide in ahead of the crowd and pick up a pretty extensive land package in the same geological terrain. So yes, there's been a lot of talk about the potential coming together or consolidation of that land package, and we'll see.
So is that something you'd want?
I mean, it would have to be, it would obviously have to be in the best interest of shareholders. I mean, I think that for us currently, there's lots of upside for us to add value within our own land package. I mean, we've really only drilled 2 targets, maybe a total of 25 drill holes, something like that. So there's still a lot of work to be done on our ground, I think, to really delineate and get a better understanding of what we have. Doing something like that today might be a bit premature, but again, anything's possible, I suppose.
Yeah, anything's possible. I'm just trying to get a sense from you what your preference is, where you'd like to go, because that takes. You've got another project which you're Ponton, which you're focused on. Looking at Juan Herrera, it's going to cost time. It's going to cost money. Could be a distraction. I don't know if you've got time and money to spare. Obviously, share price has doubled, market cap's doubled. It's all good, but at the same time, you need a plan, and you need to be clear with the market about what that plan is. So, do you know what it is yet?
I think that for us right now, I mean, I think that the best path forward for that land package is to advance some of these targets, get some of these primary targets within our land package better tested, get a better handle on what we have. Now, with respect to, sort of what you're insinuating here with respect to some sort of a consolidation, I think it may be the kind of thing where, look, Gold Quest now in the current gold environment, Gold Quest has what I believe is a fairly attractive feasibility sort of staged asset in a jurisdiction that's suddenly become a little bit more, I think, attractive or de-risked to some extent in the eyes of the bigger sector industry. And so what you may start to see is some mid-tiers or maybe even some majors starting to look at what Gold Quest has, look at the surrounding ground and the land package, and maybe that's where the consolidation could come from. And so something like that might make a little more sense.
Okay. Where are you going to get the money to do further work on it from?
Well, we haven't really, up to this point, we haven't really raised money or sought money for Juan de Herrera because, as you know, for the last few years, it's kind of been passive and been sitting on the sidelines. So the money that we have in the treasury and the money we raised was largely for Ponton, and which we'll talk about, I'm sure, later. But this emergence of Juan de Herrera and the upside of Romero, we sort of saw coming because we knew that the presidential election was coming and that there was going to be a change, and we were monitoring the polls and had a sense. So, I think what we'd like to do if we were going to start to contemplate getting back and getting active there again, it's a big land package, lots of targets, so it will require a little bit of capital. And so what I think we would do is go back and revisit some of those targets, revisit some of that prior data, which was quite impressive. And maybe start to, shine up, if you will, the potential of that project to perhaps look to do a financing specific to what that budget or those needs might be. Okay,
thanks for that. Can we talk about Pueblo Grande, big town? Obviously got that agreement in place with Barrick to earn up to 70%, spend $10 million within 3 years, deliver 7.5 million. 1,000 meters of drilling and a pre-feasibility study. So just going to save you the time explaining all that. Has that moved on since we last spoke? How much money have they spent so far? And have they spoken to you about it?
It has moved on. I don't have a number for you in terms of what they've spent so far. They were, I will admit right off the bat, they were affected a little bit by COVID and restrictions in terms of boots on the ground and doing work. Because the exploration of our Pueblo Grande was outside of the mining operation of Pueblo Viejo, which is their operation right next door. So they were able to continue mining at Pueblo Viejo under very strict policies, but getting boots on the ground on our project was delayed a little bit. Now, that's since been relaxed. They can get going again. And what we've been informed by Barrick, and in fact, we put out a news release to this effect a couple of months ago, is that they had started sort of data evaluation and revisiting some of the geochemical work and the geophysical work that had been done. They were going to initiate some of their own ground surveying. And my understanding is they're currently altering some of the drill permit applications to adjust. We had drill permits for it ourselves. They're maybe going to drill it a little bit differently than we had initially planned. And so they're altering and dealing with the government and altering some of the permits. But the message that we've got from them is that they expect to do a minimum of 2,500 meters of drilling at the primary target where we were focused, which is the lithocap zone, between now and year end. So under the terms of the agreement, which I won't get into all the details that you already covered, but they have to provide us copies, if you will, of any approved budgets and work programs and quarterly reports of any work that's been done. So, the question always arises, well, once you do a deal with a major, you're never going to get any news flow. You're never going to know what's going on. I think in this case, we've got a fairly good handle on keeping ourselves informed and therefore being able to keep our investors informed. And so we expect some things to come between now and year end. If that drill program gets conducted, we should have results by the end of the year.
Are you going to cut them any slack given COVID's happened? Do the terms change, or they've got to stick to
we cut them we cut them a little bit of slack in the final stages of the negotiating of the deal because COVID was upon us at that time, and the initial deal put their feet to the fire pretty quickly to spend in year one, and we agreed to push that out to instead of 1 million in year one, we made it 2 million in the first 2 years in order to compensate for the fact that the whole COVID thing was a bit of an unknown. So I think, they've been given a reasonable amount of slack, and I think that we would expect them to kind of uphold the terms of the deal at this point.
Okay. Well, I guess as you say, you'll make announcements as and when you kind of get information through. So we'll see how that goes. And in fact, just on that, within the 6-year time frame, can they opt out at any point? And are there any kind of punitive charges for them doing that? Or how does that work, that side of things? If they go, we've done some drilling, done some analysis, it's not quite what we think, here you go, it's yours.
Yes. So a couple of quick things. One is they have to spend a minimum of $1 million regardless if they want to cancel the deal tomorrow. And the way that manifests itself is if whatever they have not spent to get to $1 million, they pay us in lieu with cash. So let's say they spent $500,000, they kill the deal, they write us a check for $500,000 and walk away. After the first $1 million, they have the right to walk away, at any point in time. But what we like about this deal is that it really is an all or nothing on that 70%. So there's no spend 3 million, get to 51%, and then take the hammer and kind of, delay and hum and haw. In this instance, it's spend the 10 million US over 6 years to earn 70%, and must deliver a pre-feasibility, otherwise get nothing. And for those that don't know, I mean, it's no small task to spend $10 million in the Dominican Republic when you have a central operation right next door. You have people, you have equipment. You're not shipping things in from other places. I mean, it's a big spend to spend 10 million in the DR, and to deliver pre-feasibility in 6 years. So I don't see a lot of room for them to delay. And so again, we feel as if we've sort of got their not their feet to the fire, but it's a deal that keeps them on track. And if at some point it doesn't deliver for them, we'll get it back 100%.
Okay, I like that deal. Let's talk about what I wanted to hear about, which was what's happening at Ponton, because that's where all the action is. That's where we've been working hard since we last spoke. So why don't you give us a rundown of the challenge that you've got there and the sorts of things that you've been doing since we last spoke?
Sure. Yeah, it's actually come together quite nicely since we last spoke. That was a project that initially when we did the deal with Barrick had inquired about including Ponton in the sort of greater Pueblo Grande earn-in agreement. And because it's only about 25 kilometers away from Pueblo Grande and Barrick's Pueblo Viejo mining operation in the same geology. We elected to keep it. My technical team, my vice president of exploration, Michael Moore, really liked the project. In spite of the fact that we hadn't really done a lot of work with it ourselves, we inherited a data set from the previous operators that we hadn't really spent a lot of time looking at. because we were very focused on the big prize next to Barrick. But when we were sort of forced with, do we want to keep this or make it part of the Barrick deal, we dug a little deeper and recognized, hey, there's a really compelling geochemical target here, gold in soil anomaly that's never been drilled. It's peripheral to a fairly interesting, what appears to be sort of a gold copper porphyry. All of this sort of speaks to what could be a pretty compelling epithermal system. And so we kept it ourselves. When we did the deal with Barrick, we of course got about a $1.4 million injection of capital from Barrick in the form of a private placement from Barrick. And so we were nicely cashed up with a couple of million, $2.5 million or so in the till at that time. And we set out to better understand this project and some of the prior work. And so, as I said, we inherited some geochemical anomalies on the property package. But what our first phase of work was to go in, send crews in. And again, we were able to do this because of our sort of existing tenure in the Dominican Republic. In spite of the COVID restrictions, we had a good enough network of in-country geological expertise and field crews that we were able to send locals into the project. Again, a little bit later than we had initially expected because of early restrictions. And we conducted sort of systematic geochemical soil. We basically collected soils over that Copey Hill zone, is what we call it within the property. And we expanded that anomaly. So there was already a fairly sizable, call it, a kilometer by half a kilometer gold anomaly in soils. We expanded that out a little bit to the north and northwest and tightened up the spacing. So where prior operators had collected soils every 50 meters, we collected soil samples every 25 meters to sort of really get a better density and understand the concentrations. And that has returned obviously some nice geochem in soils, but also along the way we collected some fairly compelling rock samples as well. And we were collecting rock samples, many high-grade samples, 7 grams per ton, 17 grams per ton, 53 grams per ton gold in rock samples, and all within sort of a fairly consistent concentrated area within the Copey Hill. And now, just as a bit of a sidebar, the Dominican Republic, in our experience, hasn't delivered a lot of that kind of surface mineralization. A lot of the projects and the targets that we've delineated, just based on the country's geology, has been a little bit more benign, and you sort of get these subtle anomalies. But in this case, to get these high-grade numbers was quite unusual. And so the next phase of work that we're just finalizing now is to run ground magnetics over that. And again, it's the same sequence of work that we conducted at other projects that's been successful. So get the geochem, get an idea where there's gold at surface, and then run ground magnetics or ground geophysics over that to see if you get some indication of what the geophysical signature might be. And so we're hoping to have those geophysical results in the coming weeks. And that, again, will give us an additional layer of data that we will utilize for drill targeting.
Okay, I mean, those rock samples are what people are excited about in the marketplace. I mean, let's say 53 grams is pretty punchy anywhere in the world, but it is just that. It's just a rock sample. So I get the geochem and the geophysics that you're running through. What at the end of that do you hope to know? What's the picture you're painting here, and what do you want to be able to go to the market and say about Ponton?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, we've if you were to ask my geologist, even 6 months ago when we sort of shifted gears from Pueblo Grande to Ponton, I think that his words were, if you put a gun to my head, I could drill this project tomorrow. I mean, it's compelling enough. It's a fairly straightforward model. In fact, one of my geologists on the board, Quentin Henning, sort of said early on in this project when some of this geochemical data came up, he said, "Look, this is a walk-up drill target. You don't have to over science this. This is pretty straightforward stuff." So we have a very concise and simple sort of geochemical anomaly and model. But what we like to do, and we've done this in the past with Juan de Herrera with target delineation and with Pueblo Grande, is to add layers of data that help us vector so that we know where within a broader anomaly, where do we actually want to put a drill hole and call it drills. And so for us, we see the characteristics of an epithermal gold system here early on. And if the geophysics sort of pan out and we get some magnetic lows coincidental with these rock samples and high grade concentrations of gold, that will be that sort of second layer of data that, again, vectors us to where we might actually set up a drill rig and poke some holes. So, okay. The goal here is to get this drill ready in the coming months. I think, sometime in the next couple of months seems realistic to me. And it'll be a compilation of geochemical results, geophysical or magnetic results, and some mapping just to understand the geology. And we layer those three together and start to plot up a drill plan.
I like over-sciencing something. Kind of gives me comfort that what I think is there is there. So do continue along that track. Just on the money, you had about $2.5 million in June. I know you said it's hard to spend a lot of money in the Dominican Republic, but where are you with that, and when are you going to need to next sort of come back to market and raise some capital?
Yep. Well, we're in a fortunate position. I'd like to give ourselves a credit for it, where we own all of our projects 100%. So we don't have any underlying option payments where we've got to dole out hundreds of thousands of dollars every 6 or 12 months. And along with that, we don't have any work commitments where, you've got to spend $500,000 in year one or year two. So the projects are owned 100%. Holding costs are very, very minimal in the DR. So our treasury is fully discretionary. And so we can spend this money as we see fit. And right now, we're focusing the majority of our efforts toward a drill play here for Ponton in the months ahead. So that what we're currently sitting on, a little over $2 million, and that will get us through. It could get us through a couple of phases of drilling at Ponton if necessary, or some drilling at Juan de Herrera if we decided to do that. Although, as I said earlier, I think the better plan there would be to raise capital specifically for that. So our drill costs are quite low in the Dominican Republic. As you know from our prior conversation, we purchased drill rigs
shared
earlier this year, beginning, I think it was in January, something like that.
He's sharing those.
I read your mind a little bit there.
Yeah, you did. But he's sharing that you talked previously about 50% acquisition costs and maintenance shared with Gold Quest. Is that still the case?
Yes. So we acquired those out of receivership for pennies on the dollar. We got what equates to about $800,000 worth of drilling equipment for 80. And we split that cost with Gold Quest on a 50-50 basis and formed a little Dominican subsidiary to hold those assets. And so we've got, full access to what equates to about, if you were to piece it all back together, because it's in parts, one fully operational rig right now, sort of Cadillac'd out, if you will. We've got it all spit shined and ready to go. And then a couple of others that can be updated if we needed to, if at any point in time we both want to be drilling at the same time. Up until now, and maybe in the near term anyway, Gold Quest is not doing any drilling. They've been fairly, again, passive while they await this license. So we expect to have essentially full access to the drill, and hoping to deploy that and get it turning at Ponton here in the months ahead.
Okay, and how do you work that out? I'm sort of thinking back to when my brother and I bought a car. I'm trying to work out who got to use it when. I enjoyed those fights. How do you guys sort that out?
Yeah. Yeah, we've got some mechanisms in there. Again, one of the key issues is that there are multiple drill rigs, and so if as and when let's say Gold Quest wants to ramp up and get 3 drills turning on at Romero, while we want to get 1 or 2 at Ponton or somewhere else, there's the capacity to essentially would be a bit of a cash call, and we'd inject a little bit of capital to get these things up and running, and go from there. And so we've got some mechanisms in the way that we've set up the deal with respect to cost. Essentially, if you're using the drill rigs, you're paying for them, so to speak, in terms of the personnel and that sort of thing. You pay for your own cost, if you will. But we expect there to be a fairly significant cost savings. We've also got some really high-level guys in country, a drill crew headed up by a Canadian foreman who lives in country, and so we get the good people, we get the equipment, and I think we can do this at a fraction of the drill cost of what it would have cost us to contract out and do the same work. And it's the same drill rigs we've used and Gold Quest has used for years, so we know it very well, and it's the right equipment for these projects.
Given the market and what it's doing at the moment with gold, and the fact you've doubled your market cap since June, are you not tempted to go into market and just raise a little bit more money?
Yeah, I mean, it's a conversation that we've had internally for a few weeks, and as you and I have talked about previously, the amount of money that was coming into the system over the last several months was staggering, quite frankly, and I think when you see a market like that, your first response is, well, this isn't going to last, and then it continued to last, and more money came in. Some of the dialogue and conversations I've had with some of the banking guys that I deal with is, we're starting to see some generalist money. So you can't help but think to yourself, should we put our hand up here and make a case for getting a little bit of capital into the treasury, strike while the iron's hot. We felt, however, and I do feel, and I always have, that certainly raising money when the money's there makes all the sense in the world, and I don't dispute that ever. But I've always taken the view that I like to raise money at a time where we've got a very clear and focused rationale for it. And I think that, in the last couple of months, we were working on relatively inexpensive, low-level work, geochem, geophysics, to get Ponton drill ready. As things start to unfold there, and as Juan de Herrera starts to see some daylight, which happened in July and August, that I think creates an opportunity to say, okay, maybe there's an opportunity here to revisit some of those targets at Juan de Herrera. That's going to require a little added capital that we didn't already have in the treasury and didn't have budgeted. This now is the rationale for it. I think people want to see that if you're going to raise money, it's not just to top up the treasury. It's with a specific purpose that can bring about a return on investment for those investors. So I'm going to raise money. Here's how I'm going to deploy it. And here's the timeline for us to sort of find out if we're heroes or zeros based on the results of that work.
That says to me, your plan hasn't changed, despite, last time we talked, we were pre-2000s, right? Gold hit 2000 since we last spoke. Let's drop back a bit, but you get my point. People get the fervor is there, the excitement is there, and people reassess their plans, they reassess their commitments, and they think, well, actually, maybe we do need to go quicker because this isn't going to last. Maybe we can double the rate at which we drill, or whatever your plan or thoughts may be. But did you have those sorts of conversations internally?
Yeah, certainly, yeah. And again, I think that we, we wouldn't be where we are with regards to our land holding at Juan de Herrera adjacent to Romero if we didn't believe 3 months ago, 6 months ago, 12 months ago, that the political environment was going to work favorably and that things were going to work in favor of that permit and move forward. If that was to us a complete dead issue, we would have abandoned the ground. What's the point? But we've always believed that the Dominican government understood the importance of mining and was going to recognize the importance of Romero and the economic benefit that it could bring. So we saw sort of this development coming. We didn't see this coming in the gold market or the gold price. I mean, I don't know how many people saw that per se, but we saw that the landscape in the Dominican Republic was going to improve, and we could see that there would be the potential to basically spend more money on more targets and be more active on multiple fronts. So yes, we definitely had those conversations in the summer when things were really rocking and rolling. And I think that our strategy was, let's advance a couple of these targets. The Ponton target, let's get it drill ready. Let's get it, the final layers of work pulled together so that we're going out and saying, this is where we're going to drill this and how we're going to drill this. It's going to require this many meters, this many holes. Similarly with Juan de Herrera, I think we're very close here now to starting to perhaps revisit some of the previous work that we've done there, perhaps reintroduce people to, because I think a lot of people have bought Precipitate in the last couple of years solely for Pueblo Grande and are not particularly aware of the prior work that we've done at Juan de Herrera. But I think if some people, if we're able to sort of reintroduce some of those anomalies, some of those targets, some of the prior drill results, I think people will recognize, in the right gold environment and in the right political environment, the DR, which I think we're in right now, as you say, there's a justification for, a fairly sizable budget at that project. And so, yeah, we're definitely thinking about that. But again, I think right now we're trying to play out our strategy and bring these things to a point where hopefully we get a little bit more value. Again, that's a great unknown in the market. Things could go the other way anytime soon. But if we lay out some of the fundamentals on a couple of these projects and target areas, perhaps that's the opportune time to strike and raise the capital to deploy.
Great. Okay. Well, Jeff, thank you very much for that. Cautiously optimistic about the new government. I think sticking to the plan, the right thing to do. You're obviously careful with your money, which I like, and keep doing that science stuff. Seems to work elsewhere. And stay in touch, okay?
Fantastic. Really appreciate the opportunity, Matt. Good seeing you again. Thanks.